Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today it finally happened. At long last, I finally have access to one of the most deadly Pokemon the Master League has ever seen, Enamorus. Enamorus was initially only released in Elite Raids, which meant if you didn't play that raid day, you were out of luck. But it's finally back in regular 5-star raids, so I raided it up and fully maxed it out. And I built an absolutely devastating Master League team. Ho-Oh lead, Dialga Origin save switch, and Enamorus closer produced amazing results all day today for myself and my Discord members who tried it. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and let's go Enamorus. Hopping to the first match, picking up a very good lead, leading Ho-Oh into an opposing Enamorus. Enamorus, odds are if you're playing Master League this week, is going to be very common as finally people have access to this Pokemon. I am going to tank the fly, go for the Sacred Fire, and grab a shield from my opponent. No Sacred Fire debuff will come through. I am going to commit the shield, and instead of wasting a Brave Bird on a very low health Enamorus, I'm just going to save switch into Dialga. And it seems my opponent had a very similar idea when it comes to building a team around Enamorus. I think Enamorus Ho-Oh core is a very strong core. Realistically, the only thing that breaks it is Nihilego, and Nihilego is a pretty rare Pokemon in a meta where Rhyperior is absolutely everywhere. And now, my opponent is one off a Brave Bird, but I stored a Brave Bird from earlier, so I can just bring back in my Ho-Oh, go for the Brave Bird, and they just get completely removed from the field of play. Opponent in the back has Rhyperior, and this game is over as Enamorus now gets the sweep. Fly, massive damage in the mirror, but I get the farm down. In comes Rhyperior, and unfortunately for the Rhyperior, there's just nothing they can do. It's Grass Knot, it's double super effective, and that is a good game. Hopping into match number 2, Ho-Oh versus Shadow Rhyperior. This is a core breaker for the team. So how do we play out of it? Well, we actually throw a Brave Bird on alignment. This allows us to guarantee damage before they go for a Rock Wrecker, and then we just switch into Dialga to force the opponent to waste some energy. They go for a Rock Wrecker, but I'd much rather the Rock Wrecker go onto the Dialga than onto my Ho-Oh. They're now going to send out Palkia, so it seems like they don't have an amazing response to Dialga. Dialga is going to go for the Roar of Time. That's going to be shielded up. Palkia gets a farm down, but pays a very heavy price. They're only going to get to one move. They could potentially blind Spatial Rend, but they actually do wait to see what comes in. That's a very smart play by them. I debated bringing in Enamorus, hoping that they would blind Spatial Rend, but they did actually throw a couple fast moves. And now in comes Rhyperior. Enamorus is going to get to the fly and win the CMP tie over this Rhyperior. Enamorus has a massive attack stat. It cannot take a hit whatsoever. It is incredibly frail, but my goodness, its coverage is absolutely perfect in this meta. Enamorus is going to get a full farm down, and in the back, oh no, it is Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu is going to take massive damage from the fly. They don't even get to throw a charge attack, and that is a good game. We can see the same lead in the next match, Ho-Oh versus Shadow Rhyperior. Exact same game plan as before. It's way too risky for a Rhyperior to ever throw a Rock Wrecker on alignment, so we can take advantage of that fact. We throw on alignment, land the Brave Bird, and send in Dialga, but this opponent is actually going to save the energy and send out Enamorus. That's a pretty nice play from my opponent here. They're recognizing that I'm trying to get them to waste energy, and they're not letting me do that. But Enamorus, while it can do many things, it is a little bit uncomfortable against Dialga in shielding scenarios that are not the twos, because Enamorus runs Fly Grass Knot. It also learns Dazzling Gleam, but in a Rhyperior meta, Grass Knot is a must. Dialga barely able to hang on and make one final charge attack. It's going to be the Iron Head. I don't want to concede the farm down, so I'm going to send in Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh farming up. They're going to fire off a fly with Enamorus. I'm more than happy to let this go. Rhyperior could switch in at any minute. I try and go for the undertap there, anticipating a switch in, but no switch in happens, and instead they just get KO'd. In the back is Palkia. Palkia is going to get a big farm down. They do have quite a bit of energy on the Palkia and a ton of energy on the Rhyperior as well. I'm going to no shield. I know that I can survive an Aqua Tail. In comes Rhyperior, and I get the catch onto Dialga. That is a massive catch. Opponent did go for the Breaking Swipe bait. Back in comes Enamorus. And unfortunately, at this point, I have lost count of my opponent's energy. I shield up. It is going to be the breaking swipe. And here, arguably, I think I should have thrown, as I think this is only a breaking swipe. But I had lost count. So unfortunately, now I get debuffed, and I used both my shields in the match on breaking swipes, which is a terrible feeling. And now because I'm debuffed, 2 flies I don't think is going to be enough to KO. It's going to be very close. I need this to knock out. Fly does not KO, but the Fairy Wind after does. And even despite the debuffs from the opponent, we're able to survive. Great lead in the next match, leading into Duskmane. Opponent is going to save switch into a Veltal, and I get to respond with Enamorus. Enamorus does have an okay matchup into a Veltal. If an Oblivion Wing lands, a Veltal can force switch, but realistically, with this particular team, I'm not too worried about switch advantage. I would much rather have a shield advantage Dialga, so I'm very okay letting my opponent flip switch. Enamorus did its job. It got a Veltal very low, it grabbed me a shield advantage, and now I can, at the cost of having to take 1 Oblivion Wing, get free 40 energy on my Ho-Oh. They send in Palkia, let's fire off the Brave Bird, get some very significant damage, and then Dialga will be in a great position to clean up the game. In the back, my opponent actually on Metal Claw on the Duskmane. So I don't know if they just forgot to TM it from raids, or if they're trying out some new tech. But either way, I do like seeing people try out some interesting things in the Master League. One thing that I love about Dialga and why I put it back on the team is Dialga's matchup into Duskmane is a lot less convincing than Duskmane might want it to be. Dialga can just put in an incredible amount of work. Switch timer's up. I get to send in Ho-Oh. In comes Palkia, and Palkia is going to get met with the Brave Bird. Brave Bird is going to be good night for that Palkia. In comes Duskmane. Duskmane is barely going to get that farm down. I had the move on Dialga. Unfortunately, the move did not show up, but the good news here is that I can just click it and I'm still in a winning position. It's always scary when the charge move doesn't show up. Definitely not ideal. Niantic, please fix that. But the good news is it doesn't cost us this game. Ooh, we've got a cool pick from the opponent in the next match, leading Ho-Oh into Dawn Wings. Dawn Wings, and this is the shiny Dawn Wings as well. Dawn Wings going to throw on very nice timing here, forcing me as the Ho-Oh player to throw an alignment or to go over 100 energy. So I'm forced to just throw on alignment here. I will go for an undercharge as I go for the Sacred Fire. They end up shielding, and now I'm going to go for the Brave Bird. I am no longer going to be undercharging. I'm just looking for the knockout or the shield. I get the shield, and now I can send out Dialga. And this is a bit of an interesting spot. I want to save a shield for Enamorus, so I am going to let the Moongeist land. That does huge damage. Opponent now sends out Xerneas, but if Xerneas wants to farm down, this is not going to be a particularly comfortable farm down whatsoever. Ironhead is going to land. Oh my goodness, I think I get another Ironhead. Come on, Dialga. We get there, and the opponent is forced to throw a move at a 1 HP Dialga. That works out great for me, and now Ho-Oh completely walls this, so I'm just going to be sending in Ho-Oh, as I know that Ho-Oh will be able to tank whatever they throw, and I still have a shield available for Enamorus in the end game. Close combat is going to connect. I leave very close to a charge attack, but I'm not quite there. In comes Dawn Wings, and here I should have just thrown the Brave Bird, because now things do get a little bit tricky. I end up shielding. They're going to switch. I simul switch out. I didn't throw the move, and I think I have just lost this game. All I had to do was A, just throw the Brave Bird and KO Dawn Wings, and then in the 1-0, Enamorus can very comfortably beat Zacian, or B, not throw the move, just let it go, and then just save the shield for Enamorus. Either way, Enamorus with a shield was winning, but unfortunately my opponent transferred the damage onto the Zacian, and they're able to farm me down. So the only loss that I've had so far in this video was a game that I could have completely won if I just played a little bit better. Very familiar lead in the next match, Ho-Oh versus Enamorus. I'm a little worried that the Enamorus might try and catch, so I am actually going to overfarm here. They don't go for the catch, so instead I am actually going to throw on alignment. Not great timing, but in that particular instance, I was worried about them switching out. They're now at the back-to-back flies, and look how much damage Enamorus does against Ho-Oh, even though Ho-Oh is a good matchup. And here, I'm going to avoid a CMP tie entirely and just make a catch of the fly onto Dialga. Dialga is going to be met with Duskmane, and this is what we're trying to bait out with this team. Bait out the Duskmane, free up Enamorus to completely devastate opponents in the endgame. Full send of the Roar of Time, that's gonna land. Look at the damage, my goodness. Duskmane barely clinging to life as it goes for the Dark Pulse. They unfortunately will get a farm down. I send in Enamorus, and I'm willing to use a shield in exchange for a 1 Fairy Wind head start. So Enamorus gets the farm down, I farm down their Enamorus, and whatever they had in bag did not want to see Enamorus, as they will resign the match. Ho-Oh versus Dialga, there's a safe switch to a Shadow Rhyperior, and I get to respond with Enamorus. Enamorus gonna strike first with a Grass Knot. Grass Knot would easily pick up the one-hit KO, so my opponent will commit the shield. They're farming up a ton, up to 90 energy, and I will commit the shield. Is it gonna be the bait? Yes, they're gonna bait with the Breaking Swipe, and now I get to make it to Grass Knot number 2. This Grass Knot into Rhyperior is going to be shielded. Rhyperior farming up a ton, and now I am at the Grass Knot. As long as I shield correctly here, I can safely do one and the move. The opponent, oh my goodness, they waited a turn and caught back onto Dialga. What a devastating catch. I'm forced to stay in, rebank the energy, send in Ho-Oh, but what a sensational catch by my opponent. My elo at the time of recording is in the 3300, so we're going up against some absolutely terrific competition. I don't want to KO here, so I will go for an undercharge on the Sacred Fire, but unfortunately I don't undercharge it enough. My biggest issue as they bring in Kyogre is the fact that my switch timer is not going to be available. When I send in Dialga, the fact that they caught and I had to rebank, the switch clocks are extremely misaligned, and that's very bad news for me as Shadow Rhyperior hits the field, does half my health with a Rock Wrecker. I can switch into Enamorus and go for the fly. I need to make it to a Grass Knot. Come on, Enamorus. Enamorus, can we survive the waterfalls? We just get KO'd. And I lose a game where I completely RPS the opponent, but I got massively outplayed. Shout out to my opponent. What an unbelievably good catch. And that completely flipped the game in their favor. It's like looking in a mirror in the next match. Ho-Oh versus Ho-Oh. I'm going to go for the Sacred Fire right away. And it looks like this time I was actually able to win the CMP tie in the Ho-Oh mirror. So I go for the Sacred Fire. They no shield, I'm going to no shield as well, and since they're more or less energy dry, now I'm going to aggressively switch into Dialga. Dialga up energy is still unbelievably deadly in the Master League, and a lot of teams just are not necessarily prepared for it. I'm going to shield up the Sacred Fire, they're forced to mirror, I'm going to farm up just shy of 100 energy and go for a bait. The threat of losing their energy to a Roar of Time is going to force a shield, and they're going to fire off a charge attack right before I get to my move. It is going to be the Iron Head. It does not KO. Best buddy Dialga Origin hangs on, makes the Roar of Time. That's a one-hit KO. And in the back, they have Dawn Wings. Dawn Wings is going to be a little scary. I do send in the Ho-Oh, fire off the Brave Bird. This will guarantee the final shield, and then it's going to be up to Enamorus to try and sweep in the endgame. They have a lot of energy available on the Dawn Wings. I'm going to decide to respect the Moongeist Beam here. It's the Dark Pulse bait that's devastating. I go for the fly, and what a catch by my opponent. They catch it onto Ho-Oh, and now it's going to be a race to the charge attack, and Enamorus wins CMP over Dawn Wings. This thing is so attack weighted. Oh my goodness, and that CMP tie just completely wins me the game. Moongeist KOs, but Ho-Oh will get the Incinerate farm down, and we're able to clutch that win. We move to the next match, and it's another mirror lead, Ho-Oh versus Ho-Oh. Same game plan as before. I'm hoping that my opponent just throws instantly here, because if they do, then I'm in a pretty good spot. But my opponent's actually going to make a catch onto Rhyperior. So a very nice catch by my opponent, and now I can send in Enamorus. Enamorus up on energy, so I'm in a terrific position in this game. Just going straight for the Grass Knot. Grass Knot is going to land, and that's going to be good night Rhyperior. Back in comes Ho-Oh. I think I do actually want to try and stall out the clock a little bit here. They go Sacred Fire, I end up shielding, and then potentially I may even decide to pivot out. So I go for the fly. They end up shielding. They give me the shield back. Unfortunately, the timer was actually not yet up. So the pivot out idea, not necessarily a successful one since I wasn't able to do that. And now I just bring back in my Ho-Oh. I'm going for the Brave Bird. Opponent is not going to catch this time, thank goodness. Brave Bird is going to be shielded. But I still have so much health that even though my defense is at -3, I'm still in a pretty comfortable position. I shield, they're going to go for the Sacred Fire. Now, I get to go for the Brave Bird. They caught again, are you kidding me? They've now caught 2 moves in this game. I feel like I'm getting outplayed in a lot of these games, but the team is so good that I'm still managing to win the vast majority of them. And now, my opponent makes the misplay that will lose them the game. They go for the Roar of Time. The Roar of Time KOing my Dialga is fine because it sets up a perfect Incinerate farm down for my Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh leaves with the Brave Bird. They caught all that Ho-Oh energy. They did what they could, but in the end, this team is inevitable. Hopping into the final match, picking up a terrible lead leading into Palkia. I save switch into Dialga, and my opponent is going to respond with Mewtwo. Mewtwo, honestly, a forgotten Pokemon in the Master League, as Yveltal and Necrozma's presence has largely forced it out. I can very comfortably flip switch here if I want to. Ironhead is going to grab a shield, but in the moment, I actually decide against it. I think it over for a bit, but I'm saying, you know what? If this is their best answer, they don't have Duskmane in the back, and Enamorus should be pretty free and clear to sweep this endgame. So they will get to land a Psy Strike, that's very fine, and I will get to unleash a Brave Bird on this Palkia. And Brave Bird, I mean, it doesn't one-shot, but it does a ton of damage. So I get to fire off the Brave Bird, they're gonna shield 2-0 shield Enamorus, and it's a Metal Claw Necrozma. This is the second one I've seen. Oh my goodness. People trying out some interesting things in the Master League. If it was Shadow Claw, I would be in a very comfortable position to sweep. But people, I guess maybe from doing these Enamorus raids, they have Metal Claw, and I'm just getting absolutely shredded here on my Enamorus. But even with them having super effective Metal Claws, Enamorus makes it to a 3rd fly, KOing the Duskmane here. And then it's going to be a race. Ho-Oh versus Palkia. Can we get to the move? Do they have the back-to-back? If they do, the game is over, but they don't. Now the question is, did I do enough damage that a Brave Bird can knock out? Can we overcome Hard Counter City? And the answer is yes. All in all, if you're looking to climb this week in the Master League, I think this is a great team. And what I like about it is it's now a pretty accessible team. You don't have to worry about using Rare Candy XL to build any of these mons. Dialga Origin, it's a Pokemon that's been out and rotated back through raids a couple times. Ho-Oh is an OG classic. And if you're watching this video within the first few days that it's come out, Enamorus is in raids right now. So if you're watching this, you're like, man, Enamorus is absolutely destroying that. Make sure to go out, do some 5-star raids. Make sure you have a Fairy or Flying type Tier 3 Mega active and stock up on those XL candies because this thing is a beast. Unfortunately, in previous rotations, I just didn't have access to Enamorus. The vast majority of Enamorus teams that I saw led Enamorus. And to me, I would rather see Enamorus as a closer. Enamorus is a really interesting core breaker, but there are a few things that give it a lot of trouble. The main things, of course, being Duskmane and the occasional Ho-Oh. Although Ho-Oh, as we've seen, if it has a little bit of damage on it, it can get put into double fly range, so it's not actually the worst matchup ever. So the idea behind the Dialga save switch is to lure out one of those 2 problematic Pokemon, and then let Enamorus be the meta core breaker that we know it is. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.